Welcome to Grow with Hassan Mir, the home of untold stories and hidden truths. Today, we journey into the golden age of Pakistani cinema to uncover the secret life of a man whose smile lit up millions of hearts. You know Waheed Murad, the superstar, but what if I told you the headlines barely scratched the surface? Imagine a life of dazzling fame hiding secrets so profound they've been whispered about for decades, but never truly revealed. Get ready to peel back the layers of a legend you thought you knew and discover the hidden chapters no one talks about. In the golden age of Pakistani cinema, the 1960s, one man didn't just appear on screen, he redefined it. When Waheed Murad walked into the frame, time seemed to pause. The camera adored him, the lights bowed to him, and audiences across Pakistan, India, and beyond felt something they couldn't describe: charm, romance, and mystery all in one glance. They called him Chocolate Hero, but that nickname barely captured his depth. He wasn't just a pretty face. He was an artist, a producer, a writer, and above all, a dreamer. Born on October 2nd, 1938, in Karachi, Waheed was destined to live between two worlds, one of cinematic fantasy and one of silent loneliness. His father, Hassan Mir, was a respected film distributor and owner of Evernew Studios, giving young Waheed a front-row seat to the glamour of the film world. But behind the bright sets, little Waheed often watched something that haunted him: how fame consumed people. Even as a boy, he knew fame is not a blessing. It's a bargain. After completing his master's in English literature from the University of Karachi, yes, the superstar was a man of intellect. Waheed stepped into the world of films not just to act, but to create magic. His debut as a producer with Unsung Badalta High, 1961, marked the beginning of something extraordinary, but his true explosion came in 1964 with Hira or Padhar. Audiences were mesmerized. Girls fainted in cinemas. Critics hailed him as the Pakistani Dev Anand, and filmmakers rushed to cast him. From Arman, 1966, to Durha, from Ihsan to Anjuman, he became the heartbeat of the industry. Arman wasn't just a film, it was a revolution. It was Pakistan's first Platinum Jubilee film, and every line, every song, every expression of Waheed became part of pop culture. But what people didn't see was what fame was doing to him. In the glittering premieres, surrounded by photographers and fans screaming his name, Waheed would sometimes go silent. His friends recalled. He'd smile for the cameras, then quietly excuse himself to a corner, light a cigarette, and whisper, "They love the illusion, not the man." Because even then, he could sense it. Fame had started building walls around him. He was adored by millions, yet he was alone. Behind that perfect smile was a man who wanted more than applause. He wanted meaning, that he longed for deeper roles, stories with substance, and genuine connection. But the industry, intoxicated with his beauty, refused to let him grow. As one director once said, "Why waste perfection on experiments?" And that's when the first cracks began to show. By the late 1960s, Waheed Murad wasn't just a film star. He was an era. Every poster with his name meant full houses. Every song picturized on him became an anthem of love. He was Pakistan's first true romantic hero, the man who made love stories poetic and made heartbreak beautiful. But fame, like a bright light, always cast a shadow, and that shadow was beginning to follow him, silently. At the height of his success, something strange began to happen in the industry. New faces were emerging, handsome, bold, and hungry for fame. Among them were names like Nadeem Beg and Muhammad Ali, both extremely talented, both bringing a new flavor to Pakistani cinema. Instead of celebrating diversity, the industry and the media started comparing them. Is Nadeem the new Waheed Murad? Is Waheed's charm fading? Has the chocolate hero melted? These headlines hurt him deeply, because Waheed wasn't in a race. He was an artist. But the world loves competition more than compassion. He was suddenly being judged not by his art, but by numbers, by gossip, by who sold more tickets that month. He once told a close friend, "They loved my smile, but they never cared to ask if I was smiling inside." Meanwhile, his personal life, once peaceful and private, began to feel the pressure too. He was married to Salma Murad, a graceful and understanding woman who supported his dreams. Together they had a son, Adil Murad, who became the light of Waheed's life. But the long shoots, constant travel, and the suffocating public scrutiny began to create invisible distance. Friends described him as someone who could light up a room, and yet, sometimes sit in silence for hours, lost in thought. He was beginning to feel trapped between the man the world adored and the man he really was. Then came the shift, a painful one. The early 1970s brought political turmoil, changing public tastes, and new forms of entertainment. The same audience that once idolized him now wanted something different. Film producers started saying, "We need a new style. Waheed's romantic image is outdated." The same industry that he had once built with his charisma now began to push him aside. The offers slowed down. The scripts became weaker, and the man who once ruled hearts now found himself waiting by the phone for calls that didn't come. But what most people didn't know was this: Waheed Murad never stopped trying. That he wrote, produced, and even directed, trying to bring cinema back to its golden era. His 1977 production Hero and later works like Ishara were attempts to reinvent himself. But success was no longer about art. It was about politics, favoritism, and power, and Waheed wasn't made for that game. He was a dreamer in a world that had stopped dreaming. Yet, in those dark years, he inspired many. You see, failure reveals character. And even when the cameras turned away, Waheed never turned bitter. That he still encouraged young actors, guided newcomers, and often reminded them, fame is a visitor, but grace should be permanent. He continued to dress elegantly, speak kindly, and carry himself with the same dignity that once made him a legend. But behind closed doors, the loneliness deepened. Some friends noticed he had started drinking more than usual, not to celebrate, but to forget the betrayal, the fading spotlight, the whispers. And this was when the rift between the legend and the man became unbearable. By the late 1970s, the man who once lit up every cinema screen now found himself walking through the corridors of studios that had once begged for his time, unrecognized, uncelebrated, and at times, unwanted. The golden boy of Pakistani cinema was now treated like a relic of a bygone era. In those days, Waheed Murad's reflection in the mirror no longer showed the same sparkle. The hair was graying, the eyes seemed heavier, but the smile, oh, that smile. He still wore it like armor. It was his last defense against a world that had forgotten how much it owed him. But inside, something was breaking. That he would often sit alone, replaying his old songs. Ko Korina, Akele Najana, Muyi Tum Nazar Se Jira to Rahi Ho. Songs that once made millions fall in love, now echoing back to him as haunting reminders of a life slipping away. A close friend once recalled finding him at a party, surrounded by laughter and noise, yet completely alone. Waheed sat quietly in a corner, holding a glass, staring into space. When the friend asked, "Why so silent, Waheed?" he replied softly, "When applause dies, silence is the loudest sound." The film industry was changing rapidly. New actors, new directors, new heroes, all eager to make their mark. But in their race for fame, they forgot to honor the man who had paved the very road they were walking on. Roles offered to him were now small, insignificant, or insulting, and every rejection carved a new scar inside him. People whispered cruel things. He's finished, he's outdated, he's depressed. But no one asked why, because Waheed Murad's pain wasn't just professional. It was deeply personal. He felt betrayed by those he once called friends. Many who had promised loyalty disappeared when his films stopped earning. And in the ruthless world of cinema, the one thing more painful than failure is being forgotten. The loneliness pushed him toward habits he once despised. He began drinking heavily, not to enjoy, but to escape. Each night, the glass became heavier and the silence longer. His wife, Salma, stood by him for as long as she could. But the emotional distance, the late nights, and the growing sadness created an invisible wall between them. Their marriage, once full of laughter, became a quiet coexistence of two broken hearts. His friends and family tried to help, but depression doesn't show itself easily. He smiled in public, cracked jokes, and acted like everything was fine, because legends aren't supposed to look weak. But every night, when the lights went off, the superstar disappeared, and the lonely man remained. Then, tragedy struck, literally, in a mysterious car accident. Waheed suffered a serious facial injury that left a permanent scar near his eye. For an actor whose face had defined a generation of romance, this was devastating. He began avoiding public appearances. He once looked at himself in the mirror and whispered, "The hero is gone. Only the man remains." The media, Instead of showing empathy, fueled gossip. Headlines screamed about his drinking, his depression, his fall from grace, but never about his heart, his art, or his humanity. That Pakistan's most beloved actor was being slowly erased from the industry he helped build. By the early 1980s, Waheed's health had deteriorated. He looked older than his years. Friends who visited said he talked often about the past, about Arman, about love, about lost dreams. But behind those memories was a quiet resignation that he once told a friend. I gave them stories to dream with, and in return, they gave me silence. And that silence became unbearable. By the early 1980s, Waheed Murad's world had grown painfully small. The cameras that once chased him now looked away. The producers who once begged for his time now avoided his calls. The man who had been Pakistan's symbol of love and style was now living in quiet isolation. He wasn't just losing roles, he was losing himself. Those who met him in his final years said he had become deeply philosophical, speaking less about fame and more about purpose. He would ask friends, "Do you think success means happiness?" And then answer himself, "If it did, I wouldn't feel this empty." But even in his darkness, Waheed still tried to smile. That he made small comebacks, brief appearances in films like Meteoric o Maghrib and Zamana. But they didn't carry the same magic, because the audience had changed, and perhaps so had he. He once said in an interview, "When people forget your name, they don't just forget your work, they forget your existence." That quiet despair haunted him. In late 1983, Waheed's depression grew deeper. He began avoiding social gatherings, spent more time alone, and his health worsened due to excessive drinking. Yet, he still carried himself with grace, dressing neatly, speaking politely, never letting the world see how broken he truly felt inside. Those close to him remember a night. Calm, unremarkable, yet unforgettable. He spoke about his son, Adil, with deep affection. That he said he wanted to see him grow, become successful, and live the life he never could. But there was also a strange stillness in his tone, as if he was saying goodbye without saying the words. Then came November 23, 1983, at a date that would break the hearts of millions. Waheed Murad was found lifeless in his home in Karachi. Officially, the cause was cited as a heart attack, but whispers spread quickly. Some claimed it was an overdose. Others said it was suicide. To this day, the truth remains wrapped in silence. That what's undeniable, however, is that his heart had been breaking long before it stopped beating. The news hit the nation like a storm. Television channels, newspapers, and fans across Pakistan and India mourned the loss of the man who had defined romance, charm, and elegance for an entire generation. Thousands gathered for his funeral. Some fainted, others wept uncontrollably. Men who had never cried before couldn't hold their tears. That it wasn't just the death of an actor, it was the end of an era. A journalist wrote, "Waheed Murad didn't die because of failure. He died because we stopped seeing the human behind a hero." That line sums up everything. He had given Pakistan its cinematic identity. He had turned ordinary love stories into poetry. He had made millions believe in romance, dreams, and beauty. And yet, when he needed love the most, the world turned away. After his passing, many of his peers expressed regret. Some said they wished they had reached out. Others admitted that they had been too caught up in their own fame. Years later, his son Adil Murad would say, "My father didn't just act. He lived his roles." Maybe that's why the pain of those roles never left him. Waheed Murad's story was no longer just a celebrity tragedy. It became a mirror, reflecting what happens when society worships fame but forgets humanity. Waheed's death left a void that no one has truly filled. Since he was more than a film star, he was a symbol of a generation's innocence, and a warning for the next. Fame, success, love, applause, they all fade. But the truth, the emotional truth of a man, never dies. They say legends never die. And for Waheed Murad, that's more than a saying. Because decades after his passing, his smile still lives in the hearts of millions. His films, his dialogues, his graceful charm. They didn't just entertain people, they taught them how to feel. After his death, the silence he left behind spoke louder than any headline. Critics who once called him outdated began calling him irreplaceable. Actors who once competed with him began paying tribute. And a new generation of filmmakers began studying his work, realizing that his simplicity was not weakness, it was genius. Waheed Murad had mastered something very few ever do. He made emotions timeless, from Arman to Doraha, from Anjuman to Hassan, his characters still breathe inside the hearts of anyone who has ever loved deeply or lost silently. He didn't just play roles, he lived them. And maybe that's why the line between his real life and real life blurred until they became one tragic masterpiece. Years after his death, Pakistan's government recognized his contribution by awarding him the Satyamtiaz, Star of Excellence, one of the nation's highest civilian honors. But the real award was something else, the love that never faded. Even today, when his old songs play, people pause, not just to listen, but to feel that to remember a time when cinema had soul, when heroes looked human, when Waheed Murad, with one look, could make the world believe in love again. But what can we, in today's world, learn from Waheed Murad's story? Because his story isn't just about fame and fall, that it's about what lies beneath fame. The fragile, beautiful, painful truth of being human. That Waheed's life reminds us that success without peace is failure in disguise. That applause can be loud, and yet your heart can still feel empty. That people will celebrate your victories but rarely stand beside your struggles. And yet, it also reminds us, greatness is not measured by how long you shine, but by how deeply your light touches others. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, and fame, Waheed's life carries a timeless message: protect your peace, cherish your truth, and never let the world define your worth. That he once wrote in his personal notes, found after his passing. If I could start again, I'd still choose to dream. Because without dreams, there is no life. That's the heart of Waheed Murad, the dreamer who refused to stop believing, even when the world stopped believing in him. Today, new generations watch his films on YouTube, on television reruns, on dusty old DVDs, and still feel the same magic that once shook the nation's cinemas. Because true art doesn't age, true love doesn't fade, and true legends, they don't die, they live on, in the emotions they leave behind. So when you see that familiar smile on screen, remember, behind that smile was a man who felt everything deeply: joy, pain, love, loneliness, hope. And that's what made him real. That's what made him Waheed Murad. Waheed's story is not a sad ending, that it's a powerful reminder that dreams, no matter how fragile, are worth living for. And that even when the world forgets your name, your spirit can still inspire millions. So to every dreamer watching this video, every artist, every struggler, every soul who feels unseen, remember this: fame fades, faces change, but the beauty of your heart, your kindness, your passion, that is your true legacy. Waheed Murad's light may have dimmed on earth, but his glow still guides us all. This was the untold story of Waheed Murad, the superstar who taught us that behind every smile, there's a story, and behind every legend, there's a human being. If Waheed Murad's story touched your heart, then let his journey remind you: never lose yourself in the chase for fame. True success is not in being seen, but in being remembered with love. Like, share, and subscribe to Grow with Hassan Mir, where every story revives a forgotten soul and restores hope in every heart.